Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. This is going to be a barn burner of a show, I promise you. Anybody who's interested in performance enhancement, you're not going to believe this. We are going to win the internet today, Dr. Elizabeth Yurth and I, but you're going to have to stay tuned for that. You know, it's really funny. Every time I see my face, I smile. I feel like a chimpanzee. I think chimpanzees, when they see their images in mirrors, they smile at themselves. So that must mean something. I'm going to have to look at my 23andMe again and see how much chimpanzee I have in me. Before we get started, we have to thank our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. EatLegendary.com. Use the code SHR10 for 10% off. Also, to show them that you heard about them here as our title sponsor, they make a generous sponsorship payment to the show every single month in and month out. And there's no better time to visit them than now, because they just introduced a new tasty pastry, and it's hot fudge sundae, and it is unbelievable. It's got 15 grams of high quality, high leucine protein, 0 sugar, not even less than 1 gram, 0 sugar. It's delicious. Your kids will love it. If you got kids going to school, put it in their lunchbox. They won't know that they're eating something healthy. EatLegendary.com. Use the code SHR10 for 10% off. And without further delay, I bring one of my most favorite guests to have on the show, and that is Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. How you doing?
Hey, Carl. Hey, I just ordered the hot fudge sundae. We just got an entire big, huge box of them, and they are really good.
I ate 3 of them last night, back to back. I feel like a hog, such a hog. It's unbelievable, but they're good.
Yeah, we ordered like a box like this big. We had like 12 boxes.
Yeah, there's only 150 calories per.
They're so good.
I know. So we're going to be talking about something that has pretty much stayed under the radar. I've been fascinated with oxytocin since a show I did that showed that rodents that were infused with oxytocin, their muscles responded like younger litter mates to injury and recovery. And so basically the show was called Oxytocin Makes Old Muscles Like New Again. And I actually started taking very, very low doses at that point in time, somewhere around 7 IUs post-workout. And I didn't notice a whole lot, but I took it. But then recently, a guy who works for me, Kirkland Morletti, sent me this study, a very old study, as you point out. And the study implies, and I'm going to let you take it from here because you're the MD here. You're a lot better at extrapolating science than I am. But the study implies that the cattle that are given Trenbolone, which is one of the harshest, strongest anabolic steroids in the world, it causes all sorts of nasty, unwanted effects. But the effects that it does promote that people want is it literally makes you shed body fat and grow muscle like a cow getting ready to go to be processed. And that's why people put up with the side effects. It appears from this study that all of these desired effects come from the fact that oxytocin raises blood and tissue. Trenbolone raises blood and tissue levels of oxytocin 50-fold. And they say in the study that this is most likely the reason for the great development of muscle. Talk about it.
Yeah, we really used to think that was kind of stimulation of the IGF receptor, that, the IGF-1 receptor that actually was the resultant effect of like Trenbolone on muscle. And this study actually suggested not, that it was actually the oxytocin receptor and oxytocin that was responsible for this massive muscle growth. So, people who kind of then started just doing IGF and stimulating that, but you've all the, wrought with all these side effects. And could we get the same effect with just, this study suggests, with using oxytocin, which is significantly safer? And so kind of a remarkable study, because it really attributed what we never really thought was an effect of oxytocin. Oxytocin's always been sort of thought of as, you guys may know, as kind of the love hormone, right? It's actually a peptide. It's a neuropeptide. It's a 9 amino acid peptide. And it's stimulated when we like at very high levels when you have a baby, right? So that you can bond with your baby. It stimulates labor, high production of it, so that when you first hold your baby, you just fall in love with them and they fall in love with you. So we kind of have knowledge of it from that perspective. And years ago, we used a lot of oxytocin for women just to improve sex drive in women, but not for this purpose. And then it kind of fell by the wayside. And I think, even, bodybuilders who kind of started using this back in maybe 2009, 2010, sort of, kind of, it fell off the wayside, and we started using more of the anabolic hormones and things like that. And now we may want to look at bringing this back as one of our mainstays, because it's so much safer than most other things we can do for muscle building. So it's remarkable. And now there's more recent studies, and this study that was done in cattle with that was from, I think, 2010. We have some studies from 2014, 2017, showing very similar effects in almost every mammalian species. We don't really have the human studies, of course, but we have mice studies on it. But very impressive.
So when you look at, first of all, I just did a show Monday with a scientist from Brazil who published a study that shows that oxytocin is more effective not only at stopping osteoporosis and osteopenia, but reversing it than estrogen or anything else. The study was profound. When we talk about the word anabolic, everybody thinks about muscle, but let's face it, bone mineralization, that's anabolism. Right. Anytime you're building anything that's made of tissue in your body, that's anabolism. It's not exclusive to just muscle. And one of the things that fascinates me is everything that I think about, I always place it against the backdrop of evolution. Why would this be? And so from an evolutionary perspective, we and all species have one job, and that's the perpetuation of the species. Perpetuation means having offspring, nurturing that offspring until they're able to sustain life on their own. And when you think of the hormone that's responsible and released when we are doing things from an evolutionary perspective that is designed to further the species, it's oxytocin. When you have an orgasm, you produce oxytocin. As you pointed out, when the mother nurtures her baby, she produces oxytocin. When you hug someone, you produce oxytocin. To actually give birth, you have to have an abundance of oxytocin to spit that baby out. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, like, no wonder why oxytocin, and I'm talking as a human, I can't talk about other species. Oxytocin is the reward hormone for doing things that are beneficial to being a human as a species.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And its effect is interesting. That oxytocin actually appears to work, like, for instance, in increasing bone density. It appears to work actually at the stem cell level. And what they found is that oxytocin stimulated the mesenchymal stem cells. Remember when you guys are doing those stem cell treatments to fix joints and for anti-aging, what oxytocin actually seemed to do is it worked at the stem cell level, and it switched the production of stem cells from adipocytes, so fat cells basically, towards osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are the bone-forming cells. So not only did you actually see with oxytocin stimulation, you would actually see an increase in osteoblasts, but you would see a decrease in adipocytes, so a decrease in fat mass. So when you gave oxytocin, not only did you see increased bone density, but you saw loss of fat. So we're seeing this very anabolic effect on muscle and bone, and yet a catabolic effect on fat. And it really goes back to actually the stem cell level. And it was interesting that it didn't if you took oxytocin deficient animals who were bred with no oxytocin, they actually formed muscle cells and bone cells normally. But what happened is, as they aged a little bit, so as they got into what would be the equivalent of about 30 in humans, they rapidly lost. And so we think that you stopped stimulating. So you were able to form those cells initially, but then the stem cells couldn't continue along that lineage. So what we think happens in humans is kind of the same. That you don't really need the oxytocin for the initial production, but you need it to sustain. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, by the age of 30, you start losing bone. Actually, probably earlier in humans, it's probably even late 20s. You start losing muscle and you start losing bone. So by putting oxytocin back in the mix, starting at that age, you actually kept the mesenchymal stem cells producing more muscle cells, so muscle satellite cells, and more of the osteoblasts for bone. So isn't it really remarkable, right? So if we start looking at women who are oftentimes have a history of osteoporosis in their family, for instance, you'll start seeing loss of bone at a very young age. I mean, these are women in their late 20s. You'll start seeing that they start losing bone. If we could actually maintain that by starting them on low dose oxytocin in people's late 20s and early 30s, you're going to probably prevent the age-related sarcopenia, muscle loss, and the age-related bone loss that we're seeing. And at a benefit, it actually is going to keep visceral fat particularly down. So it's kind of the perfect thing, right?
And I want to talk about what you would think dosing is like towards the end of the show. I'm experimenting with different doses of oxytocin. Some people who are following me that I've been communicating with back and forth about when I first started to allude to something I'm experimenting with. I've done some really massive doses of oxytocin. One dose I had to lay down for a half hour. I couldn't get up. So oxytocin may not be dangerous, but it can make you uncomfortable if you start to use high doses. But I've learned some things when the high doses can be used and they don't feel the same. So we'll talk about that just from personal experimentation. The other thing I want to talk about with oxytocin specifically is the heart. So we know that individuals who are undergoing heart failure, the body seems to produce, I would imagine in tissue, because it seems to concentrate oxytocin in the heart. And most people would say, oh, well, oxytocin is bad for the heart. But the only other time that oxytocin is highly concentrated in the heart is during the development of the fetal heart. The fetal heart has a lot of oxytocin in there, and it's thought that is part of the neonatal gene triggers that trigger the development of a heart. If this is true, doesn't it make sense? I'm a big fan. I'm always looking for ways to turn neonatal genes back on. And here's why. If we're old and we're broken, we can stop the damage from progressing. But in order to reverse the damage, the original blueprint that your body used to make that tissue needs to be re-engaged to rebuild what's broken. So I'm a big fan of learning how to touch and trigger some of these neonatal genes. What do you think about oxytocin and its actions on genes from an epigenetic effect?
So, and in fact, even taking that back to that initial study that you read back in 2010, that is actually where they saw it exhibited some of its effect was actually in changing some of the epigenetic influences. So actually changing some of these genes expressions. So it may actually turn on some genes that are turned off very early to help regenerate tissue and help keep our stem cells producing at a different level. So it does appear to have a very significant epigenetic effect as well. And when you think about the heart, also remember it's a muscle, right? So, our heart is a muscle too. So you're going to sustain much better myocardial function by keeping that muscle as healthy as you keep your other muscles. So it does have a positive effect on myocardial contraction as well. So if you look at somebody who's in early heart failure, for instance, or post-MI, oxytocin definitely should show benefits in those patients as well, just to keep contractility of the heart better. But then the other thing, Carl, is I don't know if you've read some of the recent research on it for dementia, right? So they actually have seen that it has very significant protective effect for the brain and probably a reversal effect in mild cognitive decline or early Alzheimer's patients in terms of preservation of brain function. So it has, and maybe that has to do with some of its it's glucose regulatory effects. So that may be part of it because it does do that as well. But they saw, I know there's a couple of investigational studies going on right now using it as an agent for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's related dementias. So and I think that that may be, again, we don't know, is that all for more of the kind of glucose control, hypothalamic control, or is there something more to it? It appears there might be something more to it. It may have actually a direct effect on the hippocampus as well. And when you look at a hormone that has now been equated from everything from attachment, right? We think that autism may, people who are on the spectrum or autism may have an inability to respond to oxytocin very well. Either lowered levels, probably actually, if you look, you can't just fix autism with oxytocin, although some people will improve, right?
Right.
So it probably has to do with the receptor itself not being inadequate. So if you look at a drug that's that kind of potency, that's, all of our social attachment, our social development is due to this hormone, you have to think it probably has some pretty significant influence on the aging brain as well. So, I'm kind of excited. And then you talk about, when you were talking about kind of this anabolic, it's such an anabolic peptide. One of our problems with everything that's super anabolic is we think about it being related to cancer, right? Right. If we just upregulate everything, we actually induce cancer cell growth as well. And yet they could put oxytocin up to super physiologic levels and not ever induce cancer cells. So we now have something that
selective.
Yeah, exactly. It's super anabolic to bone and muscle, to hippocampal function, and yet doesn't appear to have any kind of negative effects in terms of abnormal growth. Which is pretty remarkable. There's not a lot you can think of that doesn't bring into, you and I have our questions about whether some of these things are cancer causing or not, some of the anabolic agents that we use. But there's always that little question of doubt that if something's very anabolic, it's going to be great for cancer cells too. Oxytocin, in fact, they actually have used it in like some brain tumors, craniopharyngiomas, for instance, and have seen reduction in the tumor size.
Wow.
So it's again, I'm glad you kind of brought this back to my radar because, it really appears to be something that we can use for bone, increasing bone density, for increasing muscle mass, for losing visceral fat, which is so hard on some men, particularly, but women as well, for glucose maintenance, for brain maintenance, and doesn't really seem to have any kind of downsides.
I want to talk about the glucose component because this is one of the reasons I think it's ideal to take post-workout. There's a lot of people out there who use insulin or insulinogenic type compounds post-workout and then eat their meal because they want to shuttle more nutrients into the muscle and all that. And it appears, as you point out, when you take a fairly high dose, like I've taken post-workout doses as high as 50 and 75 IUs. And I have to sit in my car and wait for my head not to explode. It really makes you, everybody who's tried it that I've counseled with, talked about, they were like, I got such a head rush. I thought I was having a migraine headache. Like, what was that? And I don't understand what it is. Is the blood pressure in the head going up? I don't know what it is. But also, the heart, it doesn't beat faster as much as it feels like it increases the stroke. Like I imagine my heart is just like going boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden it goes boom, 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 boom. Like you could feel it in your heart, and it'll scare you if you're not prepared for this. You'll think, "Oh my God, it's giving me a heart attack," but it's not. It goes away in a minute and a half. It's gone. But is some of those effects possibly acute hypoglycemia? Because it feels like it clears the blood sugar right out of your blood.
Well, they basically said that it has an effect on insulin. Actually, will push insulin into the muscles, lower systemic insulin, push insulin to the muscles where you want it, right, post-workout, without having a really big significant effect on gluconeogenesis or on glucose levels themselves. So I don't think it's going to be a hypoglycemic effect. I do think it's that vasodilatory effect, that's probably and that's why you get that flush, like you feel like your ears are on fire sometimes and your face flushes. So I think it probably has to do with kind of a vasodilatory effect of the oxytocin that's making you feel that way, where you just get this, your blood vessels all dilate. And so you get this just head rush and you feel like everything's kind of on fire. any people who take niacin, you get kind of the same thing, right? That sort of same, really just feeling that kind of uncomfortable feeling. Right. And I think that's the hard thing about dosing it, is where do you dose it that you gain a positive benefit and you don't get all these horrible side effects. I even found, use it when I would use it in women, and it's probably one of the reasons it's beneficial for sex too, right? Is that vasodilatory effect, and so in both men and women. But that was a side effect that women would get when you used it, and you use it about 30 minutes. We used to use it as a nasal spray before sex, but sub-Q probably works better. And they would get this kind of burning in their ears, burning in their head. In fact, it's probably one of the signs it's actually doing its job and working. But I think if you overdose it right, that effect becomes pretty predominant, where you just feel like everything is turned up.
I wonder if the effects that we attribute to orgasm have more to do with the release of oxytocin than the physical mechanics of having sex and climaxing now. Because
that's that contraction, right? That's why they give Pitocin. Pitocin is basically oxytocin, right, to stimulate contraction of the uterus at with childbirth. So, is that what causes the contractions and things like that? Is it the oxytocin release, that's causing a lot of those effects, that rush of blood and that oxytocin, and then that really kind of relaxed, good feeling afterwards. Effect, right?
Right.
When you take oxytocin, that's the other benefit. Is it just makes you feel kind of happy and at peace a little bit more.
Right.
Terry Hertog, who, some of your listeners may know, who's kind of a big hormone guy. He talks a lot about using oxytocin just for people who are shy, that you could actually stimulate people to just be more social. He always teased that you could actually take a couple that was sort of falling out of love and have them both do oxytocin. And you could actually get them to like each other again, simply by both of them doing doses of oxytocin at the same time. So it's a really powerful, neuropeptide hormone on our brain, and our bodies, and makes us feel good. So a lot of those, orgasm effects probably are due to that kind of oxytocin effect.
Really? Yeah. Because when I take that shot of oxytocin post-workout and I sit in my car, like I never thought about it till this second. But what I'm experiencing is kind of the same way you feel when you have an orgasm, like that rush, your heart is pounding, that rush, that climax, boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden it starts to relax and slow down. And I never thought about it before, but if you took just orgasm by itself and took it away from the act of actually having sex, that's the way that shot makes you feel. It just makes you, like, explode.
Right. Yeah. People describe that, especially with the higher doses. People have described that they just feel like, that same kind of post effect.
Yeah.
So gosh, you kind of look at this. This is like a wonder drug that we sort of, you and I talked about this, where we tend to be victims of our own sort of, our biohacking kind of of, oh gosh, let's move to this and let's try this
new thing. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever is the next greatest and best, hoping that we finally find the perfect thing to stop aging and make our muscles big, and then we sort of forget things along the way. And oxytocin may be one of those things that got a little bit shoved aside by stuff that may not actually be as good and may not actually be as safe. And I think we need to really revisit this for ourselves and for our patients, and and your listeners, to as something. Like I have so many women who have low bone density, low muscle mass. It's very difficult trying to treat that and trying to get their bone density up, even using some of the really strong growth hormone secretagogues. We're not able to do that. And we know the bisphosphonates like Fosamax are horrible drugs. They create very abnormal bone that's more prone to fractures.
And throat cancer, esophageal cancer. So many women lose their jawbone and they develop
osteoporosis of the jaw. I mean, I see not infrequently in my practice, women who have femoral neck fractures from just abnormal trabecular bone that forms, and yet we're using those like mad. And here we have a super safe, and actually it showed its ability to build bone was pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
We need to really revisit this hormone, and I'm glad you kind of re-brought it up in my mind, because I think was a victim of that too, where I've kind of forgot about it, moved on.
Part of the problem is if you look up oxytocin, the first thing that comes up, the snuggle hormone or the
love hormone. Yeah.
And people are like, okay, Forget that. But what they fail to realize is that oxytocin is the human reward hormone. And what I mean by that is when you are looking for the things in the human being that should be definite virtuous attributes like more muscle, less fat, a great love life, clear mind, less stress. It's oxytocin does all those things.
All of it, right? Does everything, right? And
the truth is,
side effects that we can find. I mean,
yes.
Side effects, yeah, you can get the little flushing things you talked about, but no big high risks. We're not seeing it to be a carcinogen. At least in mice, even at super, super, super high doses that you and I would never tolerate, they could not induce cancer cells. And in fact, it actually was beneficial for several cancers,
Yeah.
So
I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to pick it up on the other side. I want to talk about cortisol because everybody knows that since we're trying to focus this on the muscle building effects of oxytocin, which is really exciting, everybody knows that cortisol is not a great thing if you're trying to build muscle because it's a catabolic hormone. And oxytocin seems to crush cortisol. And I want to talk about its use as a post-workout, which is really where I find it to work the best. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Pep Talk here on Superhuman.
Snack. Reach for Select Savory Snack Sugar-Free Biltong, the healthy alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. They use a fattier cut of beef, making it more tender and flavorful. For mealtime, choose from their 63 seasonings, which are sugar and additive-free. From chipotle rub to savory pumpkin spice, you'll find an option to suit your palate. Go to shrnetwork.biz/SSS today. Use code SHR15 to save 15% on any meat snack or seasoning. Savor the flavor today.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
Guys, you've heard about this revolutionary acoustic wave technology that improves your sexual performance. It's been used in Europe for 20 years and has a 90% success rate of reversing symptoms of ED. Even if you're not suffering from ED, it can take you back to peak sexual performance of your younger days. The Phoenix uses powerful sound waves to clear plaque blockage and substantially increase blood flow. It's easy to use, has no side effects, and can be done in the privacy of your own home. Doctors have been charging thousands of dollars for these treatments. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Phoenix and use the code SHR for a special superhuman deal. Regain your sexual prowess today.
Proper hydration can lead to improved endurance, performance, and recovery. When we sweat, we lose valuable electrolytes that must be replaced. That's why Element created a zero-sugar, science-backed ratio of electrolytes that you can add to your water. It comes in 3 flavors. Sample them all risk-free with the Element Variety Pack. Carl's favorite is raspberry. Free shipping on all U.S. orders. Go to shrnetwork.biz/LMNT and get yours today. Mind Bullet is a kratom product derived from the coffee family to boost energy and creative juices. Mind Bullet comes in both pill and liquid form for the ultimate pre-workout supplement. When needing a little pick-me-up or to get through the morning fog, Mind Bullet will set your productive course fast. Go to shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet, all one word, today, and save 20%. No subscription required. That's shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet. Get yours today.
Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it. You'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're talking about the single most anabolic peptide in the world. Every bodybuilder, every athlete should be using it. The research behind it is well understood for decades now, and it's I would say it's relatively harmless. You always want to be careful. Somebody will end up having a problem with it. My tooth fell out after I used it. Well, maybe it wasn't the Oxytocin. Alex Lowry on Instagram just posted on my Instagram. So we should be hugging people between sets and have lots of dogs and love when we work out to recover faster. Yes, technically you're right. I mean, think about it. If the people who are having a lot of sex are always very healthy. They have zero prostate cancer. I mean, the list goes on and on. When you're doing your evolutionary duty, which is procreation, it's nothing about Maslow. It's procreation. You are rewarded. Your body rewards you. By the way, later in the show, I want to remind people who are screaming right now, look, we're having a spike in COVID. I predicted this because we cannot wait this virus out. We're going to talk about this later in the show. It's stupid to think that you could wait this virus out. All you're doing is protracting how long people are going to be sick. So that's later in the show. I'm not going to have Dr. Yurth here because I don't want her to lose her license to practice medicine. So let's talk about good. I'm sorry.
Your listener who just posted that made me think, however, that because now we can't hug anymore, right? With COVID. So like we can't touch each other. We can't hug each other. We can bump elbows and that's about it. So are we seeing it, now? And, I look at my high schooler who basically sits at home all day alone now, right? He has almost no physical because we don't have school. They're in virtual school, and so there's no human interaction, right? So we're all in this very high stress state. We're going to talk about cortisol. Cortisol and oxytocin are kind of opposite each other, right? And when cortisol gets very high, so we're all in this high stress, high cortisol state, and we're not hugging and we're not touching and we're not socially interacting. And so we're in this very low oxytocin state. So, is it really now more than ever a time we need to pull out oxytocin because we're not touching and hugging and, and being with each other? I mean, all the things that raise our oxytocin are, sharing meals with each other, touching each other, hugging each other, being together, all the stuff that is anti what we can do right now. So maybe now more than ever, we need to really promote this.
I bet you're right. The lack of oxytocin is contributing to the illnesses that we see.
Yeah. So we're going to see this very super high stress state. So super high cortisol. It'll be interesting. Yeah, throw around a little oxytocin, see if we see some. Because when your cortisol levels are high and you're stressed, you're more prone to illnesses, right? Cortisol is a catabolic hormone. We need it. We need our stress hormone, but you've got to have a balance with oxytocin and cortisol.
And interestingly enough, oxytocin does push cortisol down.
Right.
And that's why I don't believe it's good to use first thing in the morning when your body is using cortisol to actually create the wake-up mechanism. I found that when I've used it first thing in the morning at high doses, like 50 IUs, I want to go back to bed. I don't want to work.
No, you're right. That's we need cortisol, and we need that spike in cortisol to get us up and going in the morning. And so, and we need cortisol sometimes when we are in these really stressful situations. So you don't want to be suppressing cortisol all the time. We want to suppress cortisol at very specific times. And so you're right. There's going to be specific times, like we want cortisol really down when we go to bed. Those people who are high cortisol people who can't go to sleep at night and they're stressed and their minds are racing, that might be a great people to use a little bit of oxytocin before they go to bed at night, bring down the cortisol, help settle them, make them happier, make them more at peace. And I haven't used it much to see, but it should help induce those people to be able to sleep better. So that push right after workout to get you into anabolic balance, right? And then getting rid of the catabolic stuff before you go to bed. But you want a little, if you're going to be doing a public speech, you want a little cortisol on board. If you want to get up going in the morning, you want a little cortisol on board. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
It's when stress becomes overwhelming that it becomes a bad thing.
Well, the other thing that cortisol does, so everybody's like, well, what's the anti-inflammatory diet? What supplements are good for to quell inflammation? Your body produces cortisol to suppress inflammation.
Right.
Like cortisol is really, if you're like into anti-inflammatory environment for your body, then you want cortisol at the appropriate times when it's going to reduce inflammation.
Right. Exactly. I mean, think about that's what when you get a steroid injection, that's what it is, right? Steroids are a corticosteroid. They're a cortisol. So when you go to your doctor and they decide to put a steroid injection in your knee, well, that's what they're doing is they're increasing cortisol to reduce inflammation. So, cortisol does have some very anti-inflammatory effects, but it has to be in balance. We know there's this very, very delicate balance between oxytocin and cortisol. And in fact, they found, interestingly, in people who had a really stressful situation, like a really bad accident or, some horribly traumatic, violent effect, that if they actually had too much oxytocin, so they didn't create enough a stress response right after the trauma, then they actually were more likely to go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So we know there's appropriate response to actually have cortisol as well.
Interesting.
So if you had somebody who had a really traumatic effect, you actually want them to go through that little bit of a stress period. So you wouldn't want to throw a bunch of oxytocin, just make them feel good. Go, oh, they're stressed, let's make them feel good. There's value to going through that. So you have to, I think it's what you and I always talk about is there's the art and the science, right? Is everything so delicately balanced in the body. And when you throw anything way out of whack, you start screwing something else up.
Right. Tommy D said average dose for sleep. Thanks. So let's talk about two things. There's two different ways to deliver oxytocin. You can do it intranasally, which actually may be better for sleep because it gets to the brain to a greater degree. I just use 20 units of oxytocin right at bedtime. I take it when I'm done looking at books and stuff like that. I give myself that shot. I experience that rapid heart rate for a couple seconds, and it literally puts me to sleep. And I've experimented with not using oxytocin, and I don't get the same level of deep sleep at night. So go ahead. What do you think about sleep?
I think, like a lot of the things we talk about, the dosing is so variable and not really well defined. And, fortunately, people like you who are willing to experiment on themselves. But,
right.
But it is a little bit tough because, I think that, when we would use it as a nasal spray for women for kind of improving sex drive, and then we would use about 20 units, 20 IUs of it as a nasal spray. It's not as well absorbed as a nasal spray as it is sub-Q, but I do think it might have some better cognitive effects and brain effects using it as a nasal spray. You can use it as a troche too, so they do make a sublingual version of it as well, but that's pretty poorly absorbed. But for those people who don't want to do a nasal spray or want to do an injection, sub-Q is probably still going to be maybe the best bang for your buck in terms of just getting absorption. Remember, this hormone's got a short half-life in your body, so it's really the downstream effects that you're getting that are causing some of the benefits. So I think it's going to be probably around 20. Some people may need a little bit more than that. And then I think, maybe post, so a lot of people, what you can do with oxytocin too, is do a small low dose every day, because we also think it's a circadian regulator. So it may actually, by doing a small dose every single day, like, sometime, probably maybe dinner time or late evening when your cortisol should be dropping down, and just doing that on a daily basis, like 20 units every day at the same time, may help restore circadian rhythm. It may help sleep that way. Or even using that dose after your workouts on a regular basis, you may see help induce sleep as well, just because of its circadian regulation. I gave a whole talk on circadian rhythm and its importance, and this may be one of our big circadian rhythm regulators.
When I do it post-workout, so if I were to take 50 units of oxytocin on an off day, at the same time, let's say 10 o'clock in the morning, which would be around the same time I'm done training, let's say, it would give me a huge head rush. Heartbeat would just pound away, and I would feel it for a little while. But if I do that same dose at that same time in the day, but after a crushing workout, I don't feel it as much. I don't get that. Like, in fact, there's been days where I've taken 50 IUs and I questioned if there was really 50 IUs. And I was like, man, I don't feel that. But what I always feel is about an hour to an hour and a half after training, I have this same strange sensation of being completely relaxed. And I feel like, and I've done this, I've actually gone back to the gym and trained back a second time one day. I thought, I feel like I could train again after about an hour and a half after that shot. And now keep in mind, the shot has a lot of other stuff in it. And I'm gonna text it to you later, Dr. Yurth. But I've gone back and trained back a second time with the same volume of work and the same intensity. And I thought, this may be one of the greatest recovery drugs in the world.
It is good for it. It is really good for muscle recovery. Remember, some of those effects are kind of the downstream metabolic effects. That's that relaxation you get later on. But when you speak about just muscle recovery, because it actually really repaired muscles really rapidly too. There's a study, I don't know if you read, in mice where, when you damage the muscle in mice who were older mice, the equivalent, of actually a 30-year-old an adult. So as we don't really consider 30 old, but the human body actually starts to age in its 20s. And so when they took mice who were equivalent of 30 and they injured the muscle, it didn't repair at all. When they gave them oxytocin, they had very rapid repair. And that's probably, again, its effect on the mesenchymal stem cells. So it's actually probably a stem cell effect that's going to help with muscle repair. So you're going to have a lot less muscle injury, or those of you who are suffering from like torn hamstrings, things like this, where you have this kind of chronic muscle tendon injury. This may be another repair peptide that we can actually use, along with our, some of the others that we use.
And I think the pre-bed shot may be one of the most important for an anti-aging standpoint, because that's when DNA is replicated.
Right.
That's why it's so important not to eat 3 hours before sleep, so your body can do the things that it's supposed to do and use energy for that. But I have to believe that shot I take before bed may not be doing as much for my workout recovery and muscle building, which I am seeing in the past 3 weeks, dramatic changes in my musculature.
Yeah, that's what you said.
3 weeks is too short. I'm not going to be a douche and go, oh yeah, give me 6 months with it. Because don't forget, I'm 62. I'm not supposed to be able to. And by the way, I'm on the lowest dose of testosterone I've ever been on. 180 milligrams a week, sub-Q, 90 and 90. I do it twice a week. So it's not the testosterone. I can tell you that. But I'm gonna keep people because I'm excited about it. So Tommy D said, should this be cycled to prevent attenuation? Preventing the body's natural oxytocin production. Since it's got a 6-minute half-life, I don't think, unless you're taking an infusion continuously, I don't think it's going to interrupt anything, right?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that. I think because our body so naturally declines in production, so we know that as we age, oxytocin production, like most of our hormones, I think that would be like saying, should you start cycling testosterone in you're older? And probably because our body's production is just not going to pick back up. And I think if you're using the kind of doses we're using in the short half-life, I don't think you're going to see that. And I think probably you need to look at it more as staying on a maintenance dose of it, probably on a more consistent basis, because your body does not start making more. We know that as you age, you make less oxytocin than when you were younger. So I actually think this is something I'm going to sort of stay on a, at least a small kind of regulatory dose, because it looks like it may be a pretty big player in that age-related sarcopenia. I mean, you look at old people and, most of them don't have, even if they're exercising. I mean, I have some 90-year-olds that are still exercising pretty regularly. They're just not building muscle, even if I have them on testosterone, right? And that's because their stem cells aren't really just making new muscle cells.
Right.
Testosterone can enlarge those muscle cells, but you've got to make more, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's one you want to stay on.
I want to take our last commercial break. We have some questions that I want to get to. And then I want to talk about the fact that this is something you could get from your doctor. So I want to talk about that too, because this is not, black market, go to the dark side type stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. You've heard me talk about the pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I've found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers. Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus lifting company, Gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do that with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender, with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 25% off all beef and free shipping on orders of $100 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? The rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Hey, welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. We're talking about oxytocin. Stick around because later in the show, I got a good rant for you. Everybody's all like, what's going on? Europe is having spikes again. And this isn't going to go away until it runs through the population and we develop herd immunity. I'm sorry some of you are pissed off to hear that, but wait till later in the show. I'm going to explain it for you. I'm going to break it down. So the nice thing about oxytocin is you could go to your physician and get it prescribed. It's not like the DEA and WADA and all this other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that doctors prescribe oxytocin. If one of the byproducts is you get leaner and more muscular, good on you, right?
Yeah, this is an FDA approved drug. I mean, it's a hormone we utilize in medicine, largely in labor and delivery, right? But there's they're utilizing it a lot in, these autism spectrum disorders. So it is a perfectly, legal, FDA approved. We don't have to worry about utilizing it. Drug that your doctor can prescribe for you. I'm probably not many know much about prescribing it, but yeah, again, high safety, legal, easy to use. If you don't want to do subcutaneous injections, we know there's effects from intranasal delivery. You probably just need to use a little bit more, and with every benefit I think that you can think of. So I think we have to really look at this in some depth, and I think we're going to have to sort of figure out exactly what the best dose is, and I think it's going to be a little different depending on what your goals are trying to achieve.
And each person's sensitivity to it, I think, too.
Right. What are
I had a guy who did 10 units. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what are your receptors like? And then I think age too, right? The older you are, probably going to need more just because your own production is going to be less. One of the things that's interesting when we sort of, you and a lot of people don't start thinking about age until they get to be our age, right? And I think unfortunately what we're trying to encourage at my office, we have a lot of young people working now and who are trying to get out the message to these 20 and 30-year-olds. You got to start thinking about stuff then, because actually that's when your body starts actually to decline. If these guys would start getting really interested in that stuff, and I know you kind of feel invincible in your 20s, but that's actually when things start going awry. If we can start preventing some of that stuff early on, are they going to end up without the detriments you and I have faced, right? Without crappy knees or crappy hip or that kind of stuff, because you're preventing stuff. So one of the things I encourage people is that these things like this that are really safe, that maybe you do want to start looking at using low doses starting at a pretty young age. I mean, we're getting younger and younger people in here, again, even for things like testosterone therapy, right? Because we know that all these young men have low testosterone. So here's another one we probably want to start looking at throwing into the mix.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 1,000%. Rigo Vargas said, I know oxytocin is part of my stack. Do I think it would have the same effects by itself? No. I don't. I mean, look, I have growth secretagogues. I have frank growth hormone in there. I have BPC. I have thymosin. I mean, that injection I take is leveraging what the oxytocin is bringing to the party. Now, can you use oxytocin by itself? Absolutely. Will you see benefits from oxytocin by itself? Absolutely. But, and keep in mind, the stack I use is very expensive. I don't even want to think about what every injection costs me, because I may think to myself, I can't do that anymore. But the reality is that oxytocin by itself has already shown that it can be anabolic, that it could be lipolytic, that it has genetic downstream effects that are beneficial to the aging body. So if you can't put the stack together, don't worry about it. At least use the oxytocin. It's like somebody says, I want to buy a mansion, but I can't afford a mansion, so I'm going to live in the street for now. No, you buy a small house. You start with the small house. You live in the small house until you're ready to buy the mansion. And I think oxytocin is a fantastic place to start because there's a lot less negative stigma about using oxytocin. As soon as you say to somebody growth hormone or growth hormone secretagogues or thymosin beta-4, they're like, oh, now you're on the dark side. Oh, oxytocin. Yeah, they gave my wife Pitocin to bring on labor. Yeah, I know what that is. So I think you can. I think if you don't have the stack, starting with oxytocin is definitely great. So
I agree with that, Rigo. Carl is one of those. He pulls out all stops. He's pretty aggressive with the stuff he does, and and here's something that actually, has huge safety profile, is legal, FDA, easy to obtain. It has no downsides. I think it's going to have huge benefits. And I don't know how old you are, particularly if you're a younger person, right? Where you really just need that little kind of added boost to build that muscle and lose some fat. I think it has a huge benefit just in and of itself. And I think yes, of course, when you can put all this stuff together, but that isn't really feasible for a lot of people. It's hard, it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's a lot of injections. You have to know how to time everything appropriately. Here's something that's pretty easy. Do a little bit before you go to bed and do some after your workouts. And it's not that expensive and it's safe and easy.
Brave New Order Films, who is an avid viewer on YouTube, says he's almost 40 years old. He just finished an 8-mile run. Kudos to you. That's wonderful. Thanks for the fantastic information. The question is oxytocin naturally occurring in any foods, and is IV or oral preferable? So I'll let you answer both of those.
So oxytocin doesn't really occur in any foods. You can't eat oxytocin. So IV dosing, you can get a big, massive dose. Like that's what we do for inducing labor, right? It's a big, huge IV dose. So you probably could use a smaller amount and do an IV, but the way we want to use it, post-workout or before bed, things like that, probably your best bet's going to be a subcutaneous dose or an intranasal delivery. It's just not quite as effective intranasally. There are things like foods that will raise oxytocin, like smelling chocolate chip cookies, probably, but that has more to do with it's a brain effect than it does. They say that like in Vegas, that they put scents, like all the
casinos
have scents, like chocolate chip cookies, like just subtly. And by raising oxytocin, they make people nicer and more generous. And some great studies on if you give people oxytocin and then ask them to donate money, 90% of them will donate money if you give them a big dose of oxytocin. So it just makes us kind of nicer to each other and friendlier to each other, maybe to an excess. But you can't really eat it from any kind of foods.
Because it's a protein, basically. Your stomach will just treat it like any other protein.
It's 9 amino acids, basically.
Okay, so let's talk about the future. So these are the studies I would love to see. Does injected oxytocin have a greater effect of all the desired beneficial attributes that we're looking at post-coitus? Because the body is, when you have an orgasm, your body seems to be primed to use oxytocin. I wonder if giving a dose after an orgasm has greater benefits than just taking a dose on its own. Just a thought. The other thing is, I would love to understand from some of these rodent models what the human equivalents would be. Now, some of them you can't. The old muscle knew that study. They infused them with a very large dose of oxytocin. It was like 15 IUs every 10 minutes or something ridiculous like that, where you and I, we just pass out and lay there. We wouldn't feel anything. Who cares if our muscles are getting better? But what couldn't we triangulate at least what a starting dose would be if we started to look at the either the molar equivalents in blood versus, because if we knew the molar equivalents, then we can give a human a shot and go, oh, here's where it went. Like we need to try to triangulate and find out what are the optimal doses, not because you don't want to take more than you have to because it costs,
Right. And I know they've done some dosing studies with because I think one of the big research areas with oxytocin has been in the autism spectrum disorders, because it definitely seems to be having some benefit there. And they've done some kind of dosing studies there. And I know they use it more as a nasal spray, and done some dosing equivalent studies, but we've not really seen them for muscle building, I think, or bone building. So we don't see those dosing equivalent studies. And you're right, that really does need to be done in humans, because here we have something that's really safe and could be so hugely beneficial. And yet, we don't really know exactly how to use it. So we do need to start seeing some of those studies done. The problem is it's not probably financially all that beneficial to anybody, and so nobody wants to do this.
Nobody cares but us. Maybe we can raise money in the audience and we can do our own stuff. That would be fun. I'm happy to be a Wistar rat. I'll do the doses. So in summary, to come full circle, it appears that the strongest and harshest anabolic steroid in the world that many athletes use is Trenbolone, and Trenbolone appears to build its muscle and burn its fat by upregulating oxytocin 50-fold. That could also be some of the problems with high blood pressure. Not that oxytocin lowers blood pressure, but let's face it, if you are like 50 times the normal levels, it could have the opposite effect on a variety of systems. But the bottom line is, bodybuilders and athletes need to start looking at oxytocin and finding their own sweet spot with it and watching their results, because this is a much safer way to get a lot of the same effects of this harsh anabolic steroid, at least to this study. And the study will be on today's show. A link to the full study will be there for all of you who want to go and read it for yourself. But this is profound. This study is old. This study was pretty much overlooked. Thank you to Kirkland Warletti for sending it to me, because he knows how fascinated I am about oxytocin. And as soon as I read this study, that's when I started fooling around with much higher doses.
Yeah.
I tell you, I am feeling and seeing things in just a few short weeks. So.
Yeah, I'm
Great.
super excited to start pulling this into my practice more, using it myself more, because it's something that does everything. Improves my bone, improves my brain, improves my muscle, helps me lose fat. I mean, it is almost too good to be true. So yeah, I think you guys, I was so excited too when Carl asked me to do this show, and I told everybody in my son, I go, you guys should listen to this, because this is something we need to really be looking at in a lot more depth. It's gonna be fun.
Well, think about it too. Most of the things that we use for performance enhancement, women are left out because most of them have very androgenic side effects, and this is something that women can do men.
Exactly. Right.
There was one other question I was going to ask you. Well, it'll come back to me. But yeah, this is exciting stuff, and I want to thank you for having the courage to come on the show and talk about this, because I think a lot of other people would have been a little, building muscle. That's not important to me. People don't get it that muscle makes you live longer.
Yep. Yeah. Muscle is your cat, and that's as important as having financial reserve. Got to have muscle reserves. That is really if you look at people, what happens as people age, that loss of muscle is a big, huge cause of death and inactivity and fractures and everything else.
And the website is boulderlongevity.com. If you would like to retain and work with Dr. Yurth, you actually have a license to practice in quite a lot of states in the United States. Right?
Yeah, about 30 states in the U.S. So give us a call. Yeah,
there you go. And that's where you can get started. All right, look, thanks for being here today, Dr. Yurth.
Thanks, Carl.
See you later.
Bye.
We're going to take one quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about something. I don't pat myself on the back often enough, I'm told. And so I'm going to pat myself on the back here in a couple minutes. So stick around. This is going to be fun, but it's about COVID. So we'll be right back.
Want to improve mental energy and focus? Try the new Superhuman Stack from Pure Nootropics. Stack Dynamins, Albumin, Theocrine, and Palmitoyl ethanolamide together and feel the lights go on in your brain. Find your perfect mix of these four. Carl likes 1 cap of each and 2 caps of Dynamin. Bam! Lights on. Go to shrnetwork.biz/superhuman stack, all one word, today, and get yours for 25% off plus free shipping. That's shrnetwork.biz/superhuman stack.
Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Guys, you've heard about this revolutionary acoustic wave technology that improves your sexual performance. It's been used in Europe for 20 years and has a 90% success rate of reversing symptoms of ED. Even if you're not suffering from ED, it can take you back to peak sexual performance of your younger days. The Phoenix uses powerful sound waves to clear plaque blockage and substantially increase blood flow. It's easy to use, has no side effects, and can be done in the privacy of your own home. Doctors have been charging thousands of dollars for these treatments. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Phoenix and use the code SHR for a special superhuman deal. Regain your sexual prowess today. Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it, you'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. So I don't know that I can do justice to what I really, really want to say about this discussion. So back in, let's see here. I'm going to go to the internet here. Show number 2514. That was in May of this year. I explained to the audience. Oh, let me get rid of this. Hold on a second. I explained to the audience that you can't hide from this COVID virus. You can't wait it out. I said, I predicted in that show, you can go back, 2514, the second hour, Virology 101, we can't wait this virus out. What I said was, if we were able to stay in our homes for a year, not even venture out, no contact at all with other people, no need to safe distance, literally hide in our homes for a year. As soon as we came back out, this virus would start running through the population. And people thought I was crazy for saying this. And I had a lot of people email me and say, that's not true. We're saving lives, blah, 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 blah. And what people fail to understand is this virus is going to hurt us. It's going to infect us. It's going to make us sick until we develop herd immunity. That's the fact. That has always been a fact. There isn't a virologist who will tell you, yes, if we could just shut the country down for a year, no contact, this virus would just go away. No, they'll tell you as soon as people start to circulate again and move around, this virus would come right back out again. So we've had a complete shutdown, and now we're gently starting to open things up again, and they're going, uh-oh, it's spiking. The virus is spiking. The last thing we should do is shut everything down again. Really. What we should do is the most vulnerable people should stay in their homes, wear their masks, stay away from big crowds. And the rest of us who are not, we're the 99.9% of people who won't die from this. It's going to be like getting the flu or anything else. We should go about our lives. If we continue to shut down every time there's a spike, all we're doing is prolonging the inevitable. We're going to take a virus that would have taken a year and a half to run through the population. We're going to make it 5 years to run through the population. I'm positive of this. Ask anybody who studies viruses. I mean, can we just wait it out? No, because it's dormant in some people, and it will come back out as soon as we start to commingle again. We can't wait it out. And so I said that in May. Was that what it was? May. Yeah, I said that in May 4th. I said, we can't wait this virus out. Now, everybody's going crazy because there's a spike. Well, I told you so. You know, I can't say it well enough. I'm going to have Nate Diaz say it for me.
That's by both men.
Yeah. Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel? Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
That's right, baby. That's Nate. That's Nate. I let him say it. Sorry for the curse words. I'll bleep them out for those who are too timid. But it's like, I told you, we can't wait this virus out. I predicted. Once we lock down again, it's going to drop. And then the governors are going to say, oh, it's safe to go out now. And then as soon as we start going out, it's going to rise. We need to stop this nonsense. And we really, and I'll tell you where it starts. Vote. Vote for people who aren't stupid, that think that they can make this virus go away through policies and politics. The only thing that's going to make this virus go away is human adaptation. Like the Spanish flu is gone. We don't have a vaccine for it. Why? Because it ran through the population. It hurt a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't get hurt. And this virus right now looks like it's 99.9% non-lethal to anybody under the age of 70. Here, Rigo Vargas is saying, you're 100% correct. I'm sure the overreaction will calm down after next Tuesday. Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe not. They may keep playing this card. They may just want to destroy the presidency. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is science. I keep hearing people say, well, we trust science. We believe in science. Well, if you really believe in science, then you would know that we can't wait this virus out. So what do? I know. We open everything back up sensibly. People with robust health, get back to work, do the things that they do. Children with robust health, get back to work, do what they do, go to school. People who are sick and worried about dying from this, you stay home. You wear masks. You quarantine. You do those things because the rest of us are going to be fine. I now know 18 people who got it and got better. Some of them didn't even have symptoms. They had a symptom. Oh, I kind of had a little cough for a day, but I never got a fever. And then they found out they had COVID. We can't wait this virus out. And politicians who are telling you that we can, I don't know what to say. They're stupid. They're uninformed. They're saying this purposefully for whatever reason. We can't wait this virus out. And Nate Diaz told you. It doesn't surprise him. All right, we'll see you Monday with more Superhuman Radio. Please share the show about Oxytocin. I'm telling you, this stuff is going to prove to be a very, very popular drug amongst bodybuilders, I predict. All right, see you next week.